Big Money Mike does it again as the San Jose Sharks acquire Askarov from the Nashville Predators.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker of the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays here at the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first or second listen of the day. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, especially when you acquire the second best goalie prospect in the NHL. The Shark, Big Money Mike, having himself an off season. So the Sharks acquire goalie Yaroslav Askarov from the Nashville Predators. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes here diving into the trade, looking at what the Sharks got, what they gave up, and why this was a great move by Mike Grier. So let's start with the trade itself. The San Jose Sharks get goalie prospect Yaroslav Askarov, who's entering the final year of his deal, forward Nolan Burke, and a 2025 third-round pick that belongs to Colorado. The Preds in exchange get prospect David Edstrom, the 2025 first-round pick from Vegas with conditions, which we'll get to in a second, and goalie Magnus Krona. And this trade, I think for both sides, like we'll get to the Nashville part of it here, but starting with the Sharks, like you solved the biggest issue in your prospect pipeline, and that is a goalie of the future. The Sharks have been searching for a homegrown goalie of the future for decades at this point, right? They've been wandering the wilderness of goalies the past couple of seasons, and these guys have played well, like James Reimer, Mackenzie Blackwood. You've gotten some of these older veterans to kind of come in and play for you. The end of the Martin Jones era definitely left a sour taste on everybody's lips, but Martin Jones was a really good goalie before he turned into a pumpkin, right? You look at Nabokov and the Sharks have been able to acquire goalies and who have played well for them, but you haven't had like a homegrown guy for a while. And this solves that, getting Askarov. I love this trade for the Sharks. And yes, there's going to be some discussion of how expensive and stuff like that. We'll get to that here in a minute. But Askarov is perfect for what the Sharks are looking for and the timeline, right? You're getting a goalie who's just about ready to become an everyday NHL starter, who's just still scratching the surface of what he can be. And he does have his questions, right? And we've talked about that in the show earlier this week, and we'll dig back into those here throughout. But Askarov, who just turned 22, he's going to be hitting his prime here the next year or two, right when Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, William Eklund, and you start getting guys like Quentin Musty, Casper Holton. Like everything is all coming together at the right time. And Askarov feels like one of the final pieces for this puzzle for the Sharks. And again, we've talked about how great the Sharks pipeline is, but it's always been the don't look in the closet because that's where we're hiding all of our trash. And that's basically been the goalie pipeline, right? They missed out a couple years or 2 drafts ago, on some potential prospects like Jacob Fowler, who's turning out to be a nice goalie. You solve that. You solve that. And that doesn't mean that the Sharks should stop drafting goalies. Like you should continually draft goalies, but you just put the crown jewel on your prospect pool with this trade. And As for the trade itself, like giving up the Vegas first round pick, which has protection. So basically, if the Vegas pick, if they crash and burn and this turns into a top 10 pick, San Jose gets to choose between either their pick or Vegas pick to send to Nashville. So whichever pick is the worst will go to Nashville. So the Sharks are basically, like they're going to have a good pick going into next year's draft. And I understand people are like, well, you could have just had the, whatever pick that turns out to be. Maybe it's a situation like the Penguins where that turns into the 14th pick. Or maybe it's like the Devils where it turns into like the 26th pick, right? I think I would rather, right? Do you want a boat or do you want the mystery box, which could be a boat? I'm taking the boat. You got Askarov. Askarov was the 11th pick in the draft when he was picked. You just solved the biggest question in your prospect pool and a guy who perfectly fits your timeline of what you're building. Like this trade, yes, it hurts giving up that first round pick. It does. But Askarov's a good player. Like you weren't just going to get him for nothing. And for Nashville, like you have 3 first-round picks in this year's draft. Like you have a lot of ammo to go do what you want. So if the trade deadline, or if you want to continue to restock your pipeline, whatever you want to do, Nashville has all the ammo. They can do whatever they want to do. They'll have to come up with some cap flexibility here, but you got a lot. They have a lot of pieces to go do what they want. So, and giving up David Edstrom, former first-round pick, right? But between Byfield and Edstrom, you kind of felt like there was a bit of a redundancy there. So I think for Sharks fans, you basically turned Tomas Hertl into Askarov, right? You traded Tomas Hertl, you got Edstrom, you got that first round pick, and then you basically packaged those guys up to get Askarov. That's a win, man. I know Hertl's a good player, beloved player by Sharks fans. Hertl's 30 years old with bad knees. He's probably going to be good for Vegas this year, right? Is he going to be good in 2 or 3 years when the Sharks start to get good? Maybe. But I'd rather take a guy like Askarov right now who fits the Sharks timeline better. This is what you do with Mike Grier, right? You've been acquiring all these assets, and it's nice to acquire these assets, but sometimes you have to go get the big fish, and you have to spend to get that guy. And Mike Grier did that today, getting Askarov. I am over the moon. The Sharks have the best prospect pool in the NHL, hands down. Nobody else comes close right now. Nobody. You have Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, Askarov, Sam Dickinson, Quentin Musty. Those are just first round picks I just named off. Like I'm just naming first round picks. Like huge win by Mike Grier. If you're a Sharks fan, like this is an absolute like home run for the Sharks. We'll see where Askarov, like plenty of time to dig in where Askarov starts, and if he starts in NHL, if he wins an NHL job, it's gonna be sooner rather than later. If he's playing in the NHL, he's gonna be playing a lot of NHL games this year. And the Sharks now have 2 NHL goalies entering the last year of their deals. One of those guys if not both those guys are gonna get traded at some point this season, because there's teams that always need goaltending. There's teams that need goaltending right now going into this season. The path for Askarov to play NHL games is very clear. He's going to be playing NHL games this year. So I think the biggest thing for him, right, is he just wanted a clear path to play NHL games. And if he has to start in the Barracuda this year, that's fine. He's going to be playing NHL games at some point. But yeah, man, I am over the moon about this trade. So we'll dig into kind of what the Sharks are getting with Askarov. We'll kind of do a nice little recap of that. And just enjoy, guys. The Sharks have a legitimate goalie prospect. So we'll get to what the Sharks are getting with Askarov here in just 1 second. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with the YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Askarov is a shark. Mike Grier. Yeah. What a day. What? Hold on. You're not watching on YouTube. I just drinking part of my just a nice soda for my In-N-Out. Nice In-N-Out lunch today. What a day. What a day. So, what are the shark? Like you hear, okay, well, what makes Askarov pulling up? If you're watching on YouTube, Askarov last season, 6'3", 183-pound, just turned 22 with the Milwaukee Admirals. Played 44 games with the Admirals last year, 239 goals against, 911 save percentage, 30 wins with 6 shutouts in the regular season. Playoffs, a little bit of a tough go there. He played 5 games, had 882 save percentage with 325 goals against. So maybe we don't know, maybe wear, tear, who knows what happened in the playoffs. In the NHL, Askarov last season played 2 games, had a 147 goals against average, 943 save percentage. Again, tiniest of sample sizes to keep in mind here. Did give up 2 goals. Expected goals allowed was 3.9. So he saved 1.9 goals saved above expected in 2 games. Again, tiniest of sample sizes here with an 800 high danger save percentage. What makes Askarov so good, though, is one, his elite athleticism. He's been one of those guys who's played against, kind of rising up through the KHL, was playing against, men at a very young age and has been able to continue to do that. From elite prospect, kind of the way they put it here is, he's smart, remarkably controlled for his age, for his draft profile in 2020 when he was a first-round pick. Askarov has the agility and eye-opening movement range you'd expect from a Russian-developed goaltender, with the added level of control to his game that few his age can boast. His skating is above average, although there's no longer a distinguishing factor to the degree it was 5 or 10 years ago. What makes him stand out is the way he utilizes a range of depth management to effectively make the most of his wide stance, fluid movements, and fast feet. He has incredible reaction speed, and you don't see many desperation saves as one might expect from a goaltender who has the kind of movement he does. He does a good job of controlling himself in the blue paint when he needs to, and he's difficult to pull out of position by holding sustained pressure on his team's end of the ice. Occasionally, you'll catch him over sliding, but he's got good tracking and recovery mechanisms. So that's, again, Jesper Wallstedt, I think, is still the #1 goalie prospect in the NHL, and he, just like Askarov, is going to be pushing for NHL time here soon. But I think with Askarov, he's a fun dude. There are questions of maturity, and Shang wrote about this on San Jose Hockey Now. So that's going to be something, right? Is especially with all of these young players, making sure that you have having a veteran leadership there. Guys like Mackenzie Blackwood, who's kind of seen it all, done it all, or Vitek, making sure having a veteran goalie backup is really, really smart as he continues to again, he's 22. There's maturity issues with a lot of 22-year-old kids. So something I'm not worried about. I think he'll probably grow out, and making sure you're in the right infrastructure for him is going to be very important. But this is great for the Sharks. So I think for San Jose, it's a clear win. Getting rid of Edstrom, who's probably going to be, maybe a 3rd or 4th line center, and getting rid of a pick from Vegas, who, again, who knows where that slides. If I had to kind of guess, I think it's probably I think Vegas is one of those teams going to be fighting for a playoff spot. And, I think it's probably going to be a mid to late teens, very similar to what they picked last year, right? Where they picked 19th last year. I think it's probably going to be right around the same pick. So trading that for Askarov, who is about ready to start playing NHL games at a full time, I think it's a swing worth taking. So I think for the Sharks here, it'll be the big key is how do you put Askarov in an environment where he's going to get reps, but he's also going to have people around him to make sure that he can kind of work on whatever maturity issues that may or may not be there. There's plenty of Russian players in the system, right? You have Shakir Mukhamadullin, who him and Askarov are really good friends. You have, a guy like Clint Kostin. You have Artem Gyur. Like there's Daniel Gushin. There's plenty of Russian players for him. Guys also have been here for a couple years. Especially a guy like Daniel Gushin, who's been here for a couple of years. Like there's plenty of guys for him to kind of lean on as he maybe makes that transition to San Jose. So I think for Mike Grier, though, you didn't have to give up one of your big prospects, right? You didn't have to give up a Musty. You didn't have to give up Kasper Holtonen. You didn't have to give up one of these guys, one of these big fish type of prospects. Yes, losing David Edstrom sucks, but you can find bottom six forwards you can find those type of guys. Okay. Again, you got Yaroslav Askarov. You got one of the best goalie prospects in the world. And you potentially solve one of your biggest question marks is who's going to be the goalie of the future is Askarov. That's it. You found it. So now he needs to come here and produce. You need to be able to put a good team in front of him. And it looks like Mike Grier is well on his way to doing that, especially with some of the additions that they have made this offseason. I don't know how you can't look at what Mike Grier did this offseason. There's some stuff you can quibble about, but walking away overall, just a huge summer for Mike Grier and the Sharks. So one more on this on Monday. Planning to do a crossover with the girls from the Nashville Locked On Preds show, where we'll kind of dive into it more. We'll get to know more about Askarov, all that fun stuff. But yeah, Sharks fans, what a day. So make sure you're following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Until Monday. Bye, friends.